Liaquat Ahamed, thank you so much for joining me in this preview of our conversation coming up at the Nantucket Book Festival. And your new book is entitled 1873, about what you call the First Great Depression. You've already won a Pulitzer Prize for your earlier book, The Lords of Finance, about the Second Great Depression in the 1930s. I want to read the title of a magazine article you just wrote based on your new book from Fortune magazine. And the title is, I Won a Pulitzer for Explaining the Great Depression. The AI spending boom terrifies me. So if Liaquat Ahamed is terrified, I think I should be terrified.
Well, first of all, I didn't come up with the headlines. So the guys at Fortune came up with the headlines. So it sounds arrogant and a little bit exaggerated, but that's what sells newspapers, I suppose. What I was aiming at in that article is that all booms have enormous beneficial effects. The railroads left a legacy of thousands of miles of track. And by the way, the railroad boom was not just a US phenomenon, it was a global phenomenon. It occurred throughout Europe, it occurred across the world. But as in most booms like this, lead to excesses. Then suddenly everyone starts trying to compete with each other to be the top dog. And what you have in the current AI boom is a series of major companies all vying to have the dominant AI models. And they're willing to spend not tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars to make sure that they end up in the first position. So we went from spending, $100 billion 2 years ago to an estimated $1 trillion next year. Now, not all that money will have turned out to have been productive. And certainly if that $1 trillion continues for the next 2 years and we get to $2 or $3 trillion, we are going to have an excess amount of money having spent on AI. And at some point, one of these companies will cry uncle and say, we're not going to be able to make it. And that is when the whole thing will crumble. And that's my article, the article that I wrote, which just said, it reminded me of 1873. People were vying to build railroads, and they were building 4,000, 5,000 miles of railroads. By 1873 in the US, they were building 7,000, 8,000 miles, and in Europe, another 7,000, 8,000 miles every year. And not all those railroads were viable. So suddenly, you got a halt to railroad building. Many of the railroads that had already been built were not able to earn enough money to pay for themselves. So after 1873, half the railroad companies in the US went bankrupt.
And the people who had invested in them, who were the people who invested in them? Because as I think about the current landscape, you've got these huge companies that are making huge revenues, and they're pouring those revenues into these data centers. And now we're starting to see they don't even have enough revenues to really pour enough to be number one in their view. So they're borrowing money. Now, back then, it was a different situation for the railroads. It sounded like it was all borrowed money from your book.
Yeah, three quarters of it was borrowed money. There had been a whole new middle class of savers, and there were, 400,000 of them spread around the world, who were high net worth individuals. They weren't massively rich, but they needed money they needed investments. And so they had bought railroad bonds. And that was the innovation. So this 400,000 number of high net worth individuals had invested vast amounts of money into the railroad business. And when railroads went bankrupt and stopped paying interest on their bonds, those bonds became worthless or became worth much less. The railroad companies suddenly discovered that not all of them could earn a profit, that only a small number of them could earn a profit, and the others had to go out of business so the remainder could earn a profit.
Having read your book, 1873, I was just so struck by the fact that almost every single paragraph was a paragraph I wanted to talk to you about. So
Well, that's great. Thank you.
I'm just going to literally flip through the book, and wherever I land, start the story there.
Brilliant idea.
So I'm going to do this in front of people so they see there's no magic there. It was a historic trip, the first time in the 400-year history of the Ottoman Empire that a Turkish sultan had ever traveled to Western Europe. The reception accorded to the two Oriental potentates, as the press called them, was quite overwhelming. Everywhere they went, the two leaders and their entourages became subjects of intense curiosity. Their public appearances attracted tens of thousands of people eager to catch a glimpse of these rulers from the Near East. Start your story.
Okay, well, they came to see the Great Exhibition in Paris in 1867, and they were there to try to raise money from their bankers. So it was sort of an investment roadshow. And they were remarkably successful. But a couple of crazy ideas were born during that trip. The Ottoman Sultan decided he fell in love with these giant dreadnoughts that the British Navy had. And it became his ambition to create a massive navy. So he's poured tons, millions of dollars into creating the third largest navy in the world, which was totally unnecessary. I mean, Britain needed a navy, France needed a navy, maybe Germany was needed a navy, but Turkey did not need the third largest navy in the world. And in the case of Khedive Ismail, the king of Egypt, he fell in love. I mean, he already knew Paris well, but it cemented the idea that he wanted to create a replica of Paris on the western side of Cairo. Both of them raised an additional few $100 million, which kept them going for another 5 years.
Spending money that they really did not have or couldn't sustain.
Exactly. They didn't have the tax revenues to pay off the debts.
Were these sophisticated investors?
They were sober-minded individuals in Britain and France, which were the two biggest savers in the world. They had decided, if I invest in British government bonds, I'm going to get 4%. If I invest in French government bonds, I'm going to get 5%. Whereas if I invest in these bonds issued by Turkey and Egypt, who look very respectable, and they were received at court. Queen Victoria had them for dinner. I'm going to get 8, 9, 10%. So it was just a little extra greed. It wasn't I'm going to triple my money. I'm just going to earn 8, 9% rather than 4, 5%.
Thank you so much, and I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, I'll see you next week.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.